All right, so Ghana has a law that's supposed to guarantee citizens the right to information. Simple enough, right? But what happens when the government itself breaks that very law? Well, a new investigation from Corruption Watch just revealed a pretty staggering cost for all that official secrecy. And guess what? It might be coming straight out of your pocket. So let's break down what they found.
Okay, let's start with this number right here, 5.6 million Ghana Cedis. Wow, that is the total amount in fines that public institutions have been ordered to pay. And for what? For a really simple reason. They refuse to share information that, by law, citizens are entitled to see. Look, this isn't just some big number on a screen. It's a massive red flag. It's screaming that the whole system for transparency, it's just broken.
But that multi-million CD figure, it just naturally leads to a really crucial question, right? When a government agency gets hit with a fine like this, where does that money actually come from? The answer to that question might just be the most troubling part of this entire story.
So all of this comes from a really deep 6-month investigation. It's called Saga Over RTI, Millions Paid as Penalty. And what the report does is it just digs into this clear, undeniable pattern of noncompliance. And the list of offenders? Oh, it includes some of Ghana's most important, most fundamental institutions.
But before we start naming names, and we will, I think it's really important to take a step back and remember why this law even exists. What was it supposed to do in the first place?
Okay, so this law, the Right to Information Act, was passed back in 2019. And honestly, it was supposed to be a total game changer. The whole idea was pretty simple. Give everyday citizens the legal power to see what public institutions are up to. I mean, that's the absolute foundation of accountability, right? It lets you scrutinize decisions, follow the money, and hold leaders responsible. That, at least, was the promise.
So, who's breaking that promise? The investigation makes it crystal clear that this isn't just about 1 or 2 rogue agencies having a bad day. Nope, this problem cuts right across the entire system, from law enforcement all the way up to the judiciary.
I mean, the scale of these penalties is just staggering. Take a look. The Agricultural Development Bank is leading the pack with a fine of over 1.3 million cedis. But what's just as concerning, if not more, are the other names you see here, the Ghana Police Service and the Ministry of Education. We're not talking about obscure agencies. These are fundamental public services, and they are racking up massive fines simply for not being transparent.
And believe me, the problem goes even deeper. We're seeing fines of 100,000 cedis for both the Public Procurement Authority, that's the PPA, and the Judicial Service. And get this, even the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, CHRAJ, is on this list. But look, the really critical part is that final column. In every single one of these cases, the fines are still outstanding. They haven't been paid. So this isn't just about secrecy anymore, it's about a total lack of enforcement.
And this all brings us to a really crucial point. We have to understand, these aren't just isolated mistakes or one-off errors. No, the investigation uncovered something way more alarming, a systemic pattern of noncompliance. We're talking about the same institutions ignoring the law over and over and over again.
So at the very top of that list for repeat offenses, the Ministry of Education. And look, it's not even just about the total amount of money. It's the sheer frequency of the violations. They've been penalized four separate times for failing to comply with the RTI law. That makes them the single most frequent offender in the entire report, and it really suggests there's a deep-rooted institutional problem with transparency there.
And right behind them is another institution that's supposed to be a cornerstone of public trust, the Ghana Police Service. They've been penalized 3 separate times. You know, when you see this kind of repeated behavior from institutions this important, it stops being about simple error. It really starts to look like a deep-seated institutional resistance to being open.
And the list just keeps going. There are 10 other institutions that have been penalized twice. We're talking about the Judicial Service, the Lands Commission, the Public Procurement Authority. Again, when you see this pattern repeated across so many different and important sectors, it becomes blindingly obvious. This isn't about a few bad apples. It's a systemic rot that's undermining the entire spirit of the RTI Act.
Okay, so let's circle back to that big question from the beginning. Who is ultimately paying the price for all this secrecy? And maybe more importantly, what can be done to fix this? How can we restore that original promise of transparency?
And here it is.
the deeply, deeply troubling irony at the absolute heart of this report. These huge fines, they're usually paid from the institution's own budgets. And where do those budgets come from? They're funded by us, the taxpayers. Just let that sink in for a second. Everyday Ghanaian citizens are paying the penalties because they were denied access to public information that was legally theirs in the first place. It's wild.
Well, this situation is exactly why there's a growing call for a fundamental shift in how we think about accountability. The argument is simple. Instead of the institution, which really just means the taxpayer, footing the bill, the financial burden should fall directly on the individual officials who are actually responsible for blocking or ignoring these information requests.
So what's the actual solution on the table? Corruption Watch proposes a pretty clear three-step path forward. Step 1, we need stricter oversight to make sure the law is actually being followed. Step 2, enhanced training so officials actually understand what their legal obligations are. And Step 3, and this is the real game changer, individual accountability. The officials who make the call to deny information, they should be the ones paying the fine out of their own pockets, not the public.
And so we're left with this pretty powerful question. This whole investigation shows that in Ghana today, secrecy has a very real price tag, and it's a price that's being paid for by the public. So you have to wonder, in a system that was specifically designed for openness, is transparency now being treated not as a fundamental right, but as some kind of expensive luxury?